In Japan, there's a money secret that surprises almost every outsider. Imagine this. The husband works hard, gets his paycheck at the end of the month, and then hands the entire thing over to his wife. She takes control of the bank account, manages every bill, every expense, and even decides how much pocket money her husband gets to spend. Sounds unusual, right? But in Japan, this system has been the norm for decades. It's built on trust, tradition, and a budgeting method so effective that families have used it to quietly build wealth while living modestly. Today, let's uncover the secret role of Japanese wives in controlling household money. To understand why wives in Japan control so much of the family's finances, you have to start with Kakeibo. This isn't just a budgeting system, it's a cultural practice that has been passed down for over a century. Kakeibo, which translates to household financial ledger, was first popularized in the early 1900s by Motoko Hani, Japan's first female journalist. She introduced it as a structured way for women to manage the household budget, and it quickly became a cornerstone of Japanese domestic life. At its core, Kakeibo is about mindful spending. Unlike modern budgeting apps that track every cent automatically, Kakeibo is written down by hand in a notebook. The idea is simple. When you write down every expense, you become more conscious of where your money is going. But it's more than just tracking. Each month begins with planning. How much income is coming in, how much should go to savings, and how much is available for categories like food, rent, education, and leisure. At the end of the month, you reflect on how well you stuck to the plan and what you could do better. The beauty of Kakeibo is that it isn't just about numbers, it's about behavior. It encourages families to think before they spend, to ask questions like, do I really need this? Or, will this purchase improve my life? This mindset of intentional spending is one reason Japanese households have historically been known for their high savings rates, even during times of economic stagnation. Because Kakeibo was designed for women in their role as homemakers, it reinforced the tradition of wives being the family's financial managers. The system gave them not just responsibility, but also authority. Even if the husband was the breadwinner, it was the wife who made the financial plan, decided the savings goals, and controlled how money was used day to day. What's interesting is that despite Japan being one of the most technologically advanced countries in the world, many households still use handwritten Kakeibo notebooks today. It's a practice that blends tradition with practicality, and for many women, it's a source of pride. Managing money isn't just a chore. It's an art, a discipline, and a contribution to the family's long-term security. So when you hear about Japanese wives controlling the money, it's not random. It's rooted in this century-old system of Kakeibo, a system that has shaped how families think about budgeting, saving, and spending for generations. One of the most surprising parts of Japanese household finance is the tradition of husbands handing over their entire paycheck to their wives. For people outside Japan, this might sound shocking, but inside Japan, it has been a normal practice for decades, especially in middle-class families. Here's how it works. At the end of the month, when the husband receives his salary, he doesn't keep control of it. Instead, the paycheck, whether in physical form in earlier days or through a bank deposit today, goes straight to the wife. From that moment, she becomes the financial gatekeeper. She pays the bills, covers food and household expenses, saves for the future, and allocates money for education or emergencies. After everything is managed, she gives her husband a monthly allowance, known as okozukai. Why does this system exist? Culturally, it goes back to gender roles in post-war Japan. Men were expected to focus entirely on work, often spending long hours at the office, while women were seen as the keepers of the household. Since they were at home managing daily life, it made sense for wives to also manage the money. The husband's job was to earn. The wife's job was to make sure that income supported the family in the smartest way possible. Trust is a huge part of this. Handing over a paycheck isn't just about convenience. It's about placing full confidence in your partner to make the right financial decisions. In many families, wives are praised for being frugal and resourceful, stretching every yen to cover needs while still saving a portion for the future. The stereotype is that men are more likely to splurge or waste money, while women are more disciplined. Whether or not that's universally true, the system reinforces the idea that wives are the financial managers of the household. For husbands, This system also removes a lot of stress. They don't have to think about balancing bills or calculating expenses. They simply focus on working and then live within the allowance given to them. For some, this creates a sense of relief, though for others, it can feel restrictive, especially if the allowance is small. What's fascinating is that this tradition has survived even as Japanese society modernizes. Dual-income households are more common today, but in many cases, the wife still controls the finances, pooling both incomes into a single budget. Even in households where both partners work, it's not unusual for the wife to be the one who tracks expenses and decides how money gets used. So when you ask why husbands hand over their paychecks, the answer is simple. Because in Japan, financial control has long been seen as the wife's domain. It's a system built on tradition, trust, and the belief that women are the true guardians of the family's financial future. One of the quirkiest but most fascinating aspects of Japanese household money management is the okozukai system, also known as the pocket money allowance. Under this system, once the wife takes control of the husband's paycheck, she decides how much he gets to keep for himself each month. This allowance is meant to cover his personal expenses, lunches at work, drinks with colleagues, maybe a hobby or two, and nothing more. On average, surveys in Japan have shown that husbands receive around 30,000 to 40,000 yen per month, which is roughly 250 to 300 US dollars. That's not a lot, especially when you consider how expensive big cities like Tokyo or Osaka can be. This tight budget has even become a running joke in Japanese culture, with magazines and TV shows discussing how men stretch their okozukai, sometimes even resorting to bringing homemade lunches or skipping social outings to save cash. But behind the humor lies a serious cultural system. The allowance isn't just about controlling men's spending, it's about ensuring that the family budget stays balanced. By capping the husband's personal expenses, wives can allocate the majority of income toward essentials, rent, food, utilities, education, insurance, and long-term savings. In this way, the family's financial health always comes before individual indulgence. Some men accept this arrangement as normal, even practical. They see it as a way of outsourcing financial stress. Instead of worrying about bills or savings goals, they live within the allowance and trust their wife to manage the rest. For others, it can feel restrictive. Stories of husbands sneaking extra spending money from bonuses or overtime payments are common, as are tales of men feeling embarrassed when they can't keep up with colleagues during after-work drinking sessions. A common part of Japanese work culture. Interestingly, the okozukai system reflects Japan's broader value of self-restraint. In a culture where frugality and modesty are admired, men living on small allowances is seen as a form of discipline. It also reinforces the idea that the family unit comes before the individual. A husband's duty is not to spoil himself, but to support his household. What makes this tradition stand out globally is how formalized it has become. In Western countries, couples might argue or negotiate about personal spending, but rarely is there such a structured allowance system. In Japan, it's so normalized that many men will openly talk about their monthly okozukai with friends, comparing notes on how they manage to stretch it. At the end of the day, the pocket money system is more than just budgeting. It's a symbol of the trust placed in wives to safeguard the family's future, while husbands accept personal sacrifice as part of their role. It might sound strict to outsiders, but within Japan, it's simply another way families prioritize stability over short-term freedom. The tradition of wives controlling household money in Japan isn't just about convenience. It's rooted in deep cultural expectations. For generations, Japanese society has viewed women as the natural financial managers of the home, responsible not only for cooking and raising children, but also for making sure the family's money is used wisely. Even in households where the husband is the sole earner, it is often assumed that the wife should be the one managing the paycheck. This expectation goes back to the post-war era when men were seen as salary men, dedicating their lives to the company, while women were homemakers. Since men often worked long hours, sometimes barely home except to sleep, it made practical sense for women to run the household budget. Over time, this division of labor turned into a cultural norm. Men earn, women manage. But it's not just practicality, it's also about values. Japanese culture places a strong emphasis on order, discipline, and responsibility. Wives who successfully manage the household budget are praised as wise, frugal, and dependable. It's not uncommon to hear stories of women who build significant savings over decades, often without their husbands even knowing how much has been quietly accumulated. In fact, some families end up with sizable nest eggs simply because the wife stuck to her Kakeibo notebook and made sure every yen was accounted for. There's also a moral element. Being a good financial manager is tied to being a good mother and wife. Society expects women to put the family's needs first, ensuring stability for children and planning for emergencies. Men, by contrast, are often excused from day-to-day money management because their main role is seen as earning, not organizing. This division reinforces the stereotype that men are less careful with money and more likely to spend impulsively, while women are cautious savers. Even today, with more women entering the workforce and many households becoming dual income, the tradition persists. In many cases, wives still take charge of both incomes, pooling them together and managing expenses. This continuity shows how deeply the cultural expectation is ingrained. While Western households might debate financial decisions as a couple, in Japan it's often assumed that the wife has the final say. Of course, not everyone sees this as ideal. Some women feel the pressure of carrying all the financial responsibility, while some men feel limited by their small allowances. Yet the system endures, partly because it works. Japan has one of the highest household savings rates among developed countries, and much of that is credited to women's disciplined financial management. Ultimately, the role of women as financial managers in Japan isn't just about money. It's about trust, cultural identity, and the belief that the family's well-being depends on careful, steady hands. For many households, that role naturally falls to the wife, making her the quiet but powerful guardian of the family's financial future. The system of wives controlling household money in Japan has a direct impact on how families save and build wealth. At first glance, it might seem restrictive. Husbands living on allowances, wives carefully monitoring every expense. But this model has helped Japanese households quietly accumulate savings in ways that often surprise outsiders. One of the biggest outcomes is Japan's historically high household savings rate. For decades, Japanese families were known to save a much larger portion of their income compared to Western households. This isn't because people earned more, but because wives managed budgets so tightly. Using tools like Kakeibo, they made sure to cut unnecessary spending and prioritize savings. Even small amounts added up, and over time, families built significant financial cushions. Another factor is discipline. By putting one person, usually the wife, in charge of the entire budget, money decisions become more organized and intentional. There's less chance of overspending because the family isn't juggling two different people making separate financial choices. Every yen has a purpose, whether it's for bills, groceries, children's education, or long-term savings. This system also allows families to stick to strict savings goals, such as setting aside money for a home, retirement, or emergencies. The pocket money system for husbands also plays a role. While it may sound harsh, limiting personal spending keeps unnecessary expenses under control. Instead of two adults freely spending, the household channels most of its income into essential needs and future plans. In the long run, this builds stability. Many Japanese families may not live lavishly, but they often end up with substantial savings tucked away in bank accounts or low-risk investments. However, there's a flip side. Because wives often focus on safety over risk, a lot of that wealth sits in cash or low-interest accounts, rather than in growth-focused investments. This is one reason why, despite high savings, Japanese households sometimes see slow wealth growth compared to Western families who invest heavily in stocks or property. The system builds security, but not necessarily rapid financial growth. Still, the overall impact is clear. This unique division of financial roles has created households that are cautious, disciplined, and surprisingly resilient. Even through economic downturns and Japan's lost decades, many families maintained strong savings habits. By giving wives the power to manage money and set priorities, Japanese families have built wealth in a way that reflects their cultural values: steady, careful, and focused on long-term security rather than quick gains. So while it might seem unusual for husbands to hand over their entire paycheck, the Japanese system of wives managing household money has shaped one of the most disciplined saving cultures in the world. From Kakeibo notebooks to pocket money allowances, it's a model built on trust, responsibility, and a deep commitment to family security. It shows that wealth isn't always about making more. Sometimes it's about managing what you already have with precision. And in Japan, that quiet financial power has often rested in the hands of wives.